education. Did you see the front page story in the New York Times yesterday, which said that the children of the techies, of the tech executives in Silicon Valley, are going to schools that don't have computers? Allow me to explain this to you next.
Is it time to...
Michael Smerconish.
Speaking of Steve Jobs and education, and just before the break, I said that one of the other revelations in Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs is that Jobs criticized America's education system, saying that it was crippled by union work rules. Quote, until the teachers' unions are broken, there was almost no hope of education reform, Jobs told Isaacson. He proposed allowing principals to hire and fire teachers based on merit, and that schools stay open until 6 p.m. and that they be open 11 months a year. That's the world according to Steve Jobs when it comes to education. So that aired on 60 Minutes last night. Also yesterday, on the subject of technology and computing and education, I should say, was a front page story in the New York Times under the headline, A Silicon Valley School That Doesn't Compute. And it was a story about how in Los Altos, California, there are all these tech gurus who send their kids to a school, and it's called the Waldorf School of the Peninsula, one of 160 Waldorf schools in the country. I'd never heard of this before, but these schools subscribe to a teaching philosophy that is focused on physical activity and learning through creative hands-on tasks. And one thing they don't have and don't allow, computing. Those who endorse this approach say the computers inhibit creative thinking, movement, human interaction, and attention spans. Anybody read this? If not, I'll give you the gist of it. But I'm reflecting on the fact that a month ago, like second week of September, I went to our son's school, which is a tremendous school and state-of-the-art. And one of the things I was so excited to see was the computer lab, where they learn the basic skills and keyboard skills. I forget what the class is called, but I thought it was of vital importance. Then I'm reading this story, and I'm learning that the chief technology officer of eBay sends his kids to a 9-classroom school. So do employees of Silicon Valley giants like Google, Apple, Yahoo, Hewlett-Packard. But the thing is, the school's chief teaching tools are anything but high-tech. They're relying on something old-fashioned called a pen and paper, knitting needles, I don't get that, and occasionally mud. Not a computer to be found. No screens at all. They are not allowed in the classroom, and the school even frowns on their use at home. The guy who is the chief technology officer for eBay, his name is Alan Eagle. He's 50 years old. His daughter, Andy, is one of 196 children at this school. It's an elementary school. He's got a 13-year-old in a nearby middle school. He says the idea that an app on an iPad can better teach my kids to read or do arithmetic is ridiculous. And by the way, he knows a thing or two about technology. He himself holds a computer science degree from Dartmouth and works in executive communications at Google. Among his other tasks at Google, he's written communications speeches for the chairman, Eric Schmidt. Uses an iPad, Dad does, uses a smartphone, but he says that his daughter, a 5th grader, quote, doesn't know how to use Google, and his son is just learning. When they get to the 8th grade, the school endorses the limited use of gadgets. Here's the question. Are we doing our kids a disservice by making them tech savvy at an early age? I thought we were doing the right thing by schooling them in tools that they will be using for the rest of their lives. At this Waldorf school, 3/4 of the students have parents with strong high-tech connections. Mr. Eagle, who I mentioned, like other parents, sees no contradiction. Technology, he says, has a time and a place. And then listen to the analogy he makes. I love this. He said, if I worked at Miramax and made good, artsy, R-rated movies, I still wouldn't want my kids to see them until they were 17. Call me on this toll-free at 877-434-1776. What do you make of the idea that there's a school in Los Altos and 150 or so throughout the rest of the country that I'd never heard of, where their whole strategy is don't use technology too heavily too soon. And who subscribes to this? A lot of the techies with their kids. It's called the Waldorf School. That makes sense? Call me toll-free at 877-434-1776. By the way, $17,750 to send your kid to one of these schools, kindergarten through 8th grade, $24,400 for high school. California has 40 different Waldorf schools. TC, you ever hear of Waldorf schools?
You know, I haven't. And I just did a quick Google search, and I'm looking to see if there are some in our area, in the Philadelphia area, and there is one in Philadelphia. It only goes pre-K to 8th grade, founded in 1996 on Germantown Avenue. It's called Waldorf School of Philadelphia.
Interesting.
There's one in Pittsburgh, and in Marietta. There's 6 of them, looks like, in Pennsylvania.
On a recent Tuesday, Andy Eagle and her 5th grade classmates refreshed their knitting skills, crisscrossing wooden needles around balls of yarn, making fabric swatches. It's an activity.
Sounds like Montessori.
Yeah, the little touchy-feely hands-on, right? It's an activity the school says helps develop problem-solving, patterning, math skills, and coordination. The long-term goal, oh, you'll love this. The long-term goal, to make socks. My kids cannot make socks, but they know how to Google. Who's got the right idea? Toll free, 877-434-1776.
There is a solution. Michael Smerconish.
So does this mindset of computers and schools not mixing, the Waldorf method, does it work? From the Times yesterday. Is learning through cake fractions and knitting any better? The Waldorf advocates make it tough to compare, partly because as private schools, they administer no standardized tests in elementary grades, and they would be the first to admit that their early grade students may not score well on such tests because they say they don't drill them on a standardized math and reading curriculum. When asked for evidence of the school's effectiveness, the Association of Waldorf Schools of North America points to research by an affiliated group showing that 94% of students graduating from Waldorf high schools in the United States attend college, with many heading to prestigious institutions such as Oberlin, Berkeley, and Vassar. Fascinates me and a lot of our callers as well. Chris, thank you so much for weighing in. What do you know?
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Terrific.
Well, I have 2 daughters who attend the Pine Hill Waldorf School in New Hampshire, and I am one of those techies that's mentioned in the articles. I've worked for IBM and Cisco Systems, and I work for a finance firm now. And I've had a fantastic experience with these schools. We do follow the anti-computer, anti-media policy. And what we found is that our children have become extremely creative, able to entertain themselves and able to create things with resources around them in ways that, normal children typically don't. We just went through the fraction example with my oldest daughter that was mentioned in the article, where they brought in pies and cakes and divided things up into, 16ths and 32nds and 8ths to really get them to realize what math is beyond just, the rote learning you might find in a textbook. So if you look at the old adage, start with the end in mind, we're looking to educate them and create very, creative children who can problem solve with the best of them. And right now, I don't feel the need to put a computer in front of them or an iPad or anything to make them become creative. They already are creative, and these will just be tools they'll use later on in life.
The irony, obviously, here is that we're all trying to raise our children to be competitive and knowledgeable in a world where individuals with your expertise are establishing the framework, and here you are raising your kids to do same without the influence of technology at an early age. I mean, it's really an oddity.
Well, do you really need to be able to be proficient on these things? I did use a computer when I was young, and I was 13 years old, and, learned about languages and things like that. But I honestly believe it's not that difficult to pick these skills up later on in life, and I believe these children will be equally as prepared. A lot of people don't realize that the Waldorf program actually has children move through math faster than their counterparts in public schools, even though, the standardized testing comments were made. These kids are able to achieve in different ways. My 7-year-old takes German and also French She does movement. She does all kinds of things as a second grader that a lot of other kids don't get to experience, and it's developing lots of different parts of their brain that perhaps the public school doesn't quite do these days.
How about at home? What rules do you have at home?
Well, we do follow the anti-media policy, so they don't watch movies. They don't know very much about computers at all, except for watching, daddy or mommy play with them. And they are curious, right? They're very curious when they see those things, but they go out of their minds, they leave their minds, and they go off and they play. And the Waldorf philosophy is very much focused on free play, letting kids go out and experience the world and create things with what's around them, not necessarily diving into one specific area or tool like a computer and creating with that. So, that will come later on in life, and I believe they'll be quite adept at it, but it's fascinating to watch.
What you're making me realize, and maybe other callers as well, is that yours will be able to pick up the computer skills readily with ease as life goes on. Ours will not be able to go back and replicate maybe touching a book and the reading experiences without the benefit of computer screens that your kids are having. I think it makes sense to me, is what I'm trying to say. At this stage, I'd have a revolt on my hands.
I understand. If there's one thing I can encourage your listeners to do, and that is just to go research the concept of free play, because that is very much inherent in the Waldorf philosophy, and it leads to why these computers and media aren't necessarily focused on.
That I get, and there's a guy named Richard Louv who's been on this program who wrote an excellent book called Last Child in the Woods, and has drilled in me and my listeners the idea that you've got to let them go out without boundaries and do the sort of things, frankly, that we did when we were growing up in the woods. Hey, Chris, thank you so much for your call.
You're welcome. Thank you, Michael.
Appreciate it. TC, what do you think? Does that make sense?
Well, I love it. I mean, I absolutely love it.
Could you do it? Not now.
I mean, for Lent, maybe.
For Lent.
Just like, 40 days and even that stretching it. I could not personally do it.
Yeah.
Not with my job.
I was just going to say that I'm 31.
Okay.
And
well, nobody's asking either of you to.
No, but I mean, I'm just thinking, would it be good for us?
No.
No. Okay, so then let's go back to our kids.
Nor is Chris advocating that for us.
But, honestly, and I know that the setup is so totally different, but Emma has she has all her assignments are online, her teachers post things online, all of her she does all kinds of studying online through websites that the teachers fill in for them, like all kinds of, I mean, everything's online.
Yeah, everything's on Blackboard at our school.
Okay,
Look,
good.
if you walked into a school today, let's say you were moving into a community.
Okay.
And you went into, it doesn't really matter, it could be elementary, certainly if it were a middle or high school, and you saw no computers, wouldn't you think that the district was deficient?
Yes.
What's with these folks? Haven't they come into the 21st century yet?
Yeah, there's no question.
Aren't our kids going to be behind the eight ball? And yet here are all these tech gurus sending their kids where there are no computers.
But I'm not sure how fast you can pick it up. I mean, I feel like kids, I feel like adults, even 5 years younger than I am, are much more tech savvy than I am. So my point is I feel like you are delaying your kids, I think, because you're not letting them do maybe your kids won't be total idiots, but I feel like 5 years makes a difference.
It's a good observation. This is Kathy. Kathy, welcome to the program. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
This is amazing. I just got in my car from college. I'm going back to college at a mature age. And I heard the end of your show, and I thought, that is amazing. Just the other day, I have an essay that's coming up, and I was thinking of subjects to do it on. I thought, and when my 11-year-old, who is constantly on the computer because of schoolwork, which is also like she was just saying, all the homework assignments are posted online, and some of the assignments, math the other day was online. I think in 6th grade, and this was last year as well. And I'm thinking, this is just crazy.
Does it make sense what you've just heard?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The Waldorf part and what you two were just talking about? Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm looking at their website, by the way, local to me, the Waldorf School of Philadelphia. Boy, what a beautiful site.
It sounds fabulous.
Yeah, got it all going on here. Very interesting.
I also have a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old, and it wasn't the case back then, and they can write fairly well. I think all the losses, like